G'day, Chief. Good to be with you once again. Today, we're going to talk in depth about something that I've had a growing passion for over time, and it's this thing called deep thinking time or deep structured thinking time. Two events in my life have have played a bit of a role in this. When I first started out in the coaching world, I obviously went and did all the courses to learn all about coaching and psychology and neurolinguistics, behavioral economics, all these things. And during that coaching period, I came to understand that there were a lot of problems in my life where I just was not using the full power of my own brain. I was not using the power of my own brain to solve all of my problems. Sometimes I would rush in quickly. I wouldn't define the problem well. He was just really was poor quality thinking. And as a result of poor quality thinking, I was getting low quality consequences in several parts of my life. Bill Gates has an annual tradition where for a week he goes out to a remote log cabin and all he does is read and think. Read and think. There's a great line by Yoda, and the line is this: you will know the good from the bad when you are calm, at peace. One of the most recommended books on our show is this book right here called Sapiens, and the one that goes with it by Noah Harari, who these days is probably one of the most sought after thinkers on the planet. And Yuval, he's explained early days that he was really battling to come up with some quality thinking. So he learnt meditation in particular. And he said to himself, if I can't meditate for an hour, can't even think about or stay calm on one thing for an hour, how can I try and solve the world's biggest problems? So what he was doing in those moments was finding a way to really bring to fore his greatest wisdom, his real strength, the big brain upstairs. The second thing that happened to me, which was really interesting, is I was given a book a while back called The Road Less Stupid by a guy called Keith Cunningham. And Keith was a very successful property magnate in, I think, Los Angeles. And he made a ton of money, millions and millions of dollars, and then he lost it all. He lost it all because he just didn't see things coming when he should have seen these things coming, things like the GFC and the subprime market. And as a result, years later, Keith actually remade all that money again. But what he did was he started putting in his week and his month structured, deep thinking time. And that's what I want you to think about now and to start finding a way to get this into your life and into your work, right? Imagine for a minute the biggest problem you've got right now. And I want you to ask yourself, what percentage of my brain, of my internal resources, all the creativity, all my experience and wisdom and knowledge and history, am I bringing to solve this problem? How much ownership of that problem am I taking? And how much energy am I putting into actually solving it to get a really creative, low risk, high quality, high impact outcome? Normally when I'm battling with a problem, the answer to those questions is a bit embarrassing. It's not a great number. It's not a great number. But when I bring it inside and I own that particular challenge and I say to myself, I'm going to bring all of my knowledge, I'm going to stump up, I'm going to get my brain working, and I'm going to solve this problem, things change immediately. Now, I'm not just talking about ownership though here. I'm talking about actually finding the time to let the brain go to work. So a couple of key things here. What I'm talking about is getting away from the office, getting away from home, going up into the mountains or the beach or somewhere remote, somewhere isolated, and having structured, deep thinking time for minimum 2 to 4 hours, maximum several days. That's what I'm talking about. This is not as hard as some might think to actually get into your life, because we all feel like we shouldn't leave our day-to-day grind because, oh, we've got to be at this meeting, or I need to be present for this. To be honest, most of that are self-constructs that we can challenge easily. And I challenge you to do that, to find some time, Chief, find some time to get away. So preparation is key. First of all, find the time. Second of all, pick the environment that you know is going to inspire you, right? Pick them, and it might be a cabin somewhere. It might be on the beach. It might be a desk in the hills. It might be this corner of a cafe that you know never has anybody in it. Find the space. The environment is key. Set the intention. And the intention is vital here, to be present, to be 100% focused, to be committed to deep thinking time. Creating this space and saying, that is my time to think, has a profound effect on your concentration in the moment. We're talking about peak concentration here. As a result, you don't want to be interrupted. No interruptions. So you might need to inform people. Tell your partner, your husband or your wife or your kids. Tell people, this is my time. I need to be here. Right. And the last thing is, right, I'm sure you've got the time. So now we want to make sure we've got all the resources we need to take with us. So if you need papers to read, if you need additional data, if you need some inspiration, take it with you. Once you're there, make sure there is a task you're trying to complete. Turn up, ready to solve a problem, to finish something that's going to require big thinking. Lock the world out. Now, some people put on white noise, some people put on music. Some people, if it's a quiet enough place, need nothing. Create that space and then focus on one thing. So that might be a marketing plan you've got. It could be a cash flow issue, it could be a personnel issue, it might be a partnership issue, it could be a relationship issue, it could be at home, right? Set the intention and then go about solving it. Now, this is where I think there's a few techniques that will really help this process come to life, okay? The first is mind mapping. Complex issues that are hard to solve are really good when they're out of your brain on the paper. So sometimes if you just mind map, get all the little things out around this particular problem, define it in detail, you will find that a lot of the pressure and the anxiety and the complexity just disappears. So get it out of your head onto paper and let it flow. I've got a little rule when I'm mind mapping. I start my mind mapping, I draw a branch, I add a little piece about it. I don't finish until I say this little line. I say to myself, is that it? Is everything out of my head? It's like I'm pouring out of my head like a jug full of water, and I want the jug to be 100% empty. Anything more in my brain, in my unconscious, in my heart that is rattling around on this problem, I try and make sure it's out onto the page. So mind mapping is a great technique to allow complexity to simplify. The second thing I sometimes use is a timeline on the ground. I'll actually put a couple of markers, one marker on the ground that might be representing today, another marker maybe 5 meters away that represents a future date and time that I'm trying to reach. That future date and time has the goal, a vivid vision of what I'm trying to achieve, and right now is where I am right now. And I'll use that timeline. I might walk up and down the timeline, I might stand off it. And I often do this. I was just doing this literally about 2 weeks ago about the visioning, my own visioning for our life with my family. And I had this timeline set out with a couple of different key points we call chapters in life. And I just had my headphones on and I was walking up and down this timeline and I was standing back from it and I was just trying to bring some creativity so that I could just think about the best way we could live the next 3 to 5 years. And it just made it such an interesting and fun process. And I can tell you, my brain was lit up. I was absolutely focused on what we could do to make our lives better. The fourth thing that can really help is the quality of your questions. Okay. So try and build up a bank of really cool questions. We've done another episode on the podcast about power questions, but it's things like, what % ownership of this problem am I taking? What would my greatest mentor do right now? What am I pretending to believe to be true? If I could spend $1 million on one thing in this problem, what would be the one thing I would spend it on? What is not the problem? How can I fix the risk equation That is, how can I increase the upside and decrease the downside of this particular equation? These are the kind of questions that, like, I've just found over the years, just open doors into my brain I never knew existed. So try and get a little bank of those. There's lots of them out there. I know Tim Ferriss has a bunch that he uses in his annual review. And I've used things like that, and some from neurolinguistics. And it's just a wonderful way to, as I said, open up different parts of your mind to this problem. The fourth thing is the Keith Cunningham question. Well, sorry, the Keith Cunningham approach, which says this: have you defined the problem? Have you defined the problem accurately? He says most people, when they look at a problem, they're actually considering the consequence. So, for example, Keith would say that a lot of the time people say, hey, our problem is we don't have enough cash flow. And that might be a business problem that everyone's talking about. And he says, actually, that's not the problem. That's the consequence, right? The problem, if you go back further, is probably either a revenue or a cost problem. And maybe it's you haven't defined a system that generates consistent and bankable revenue. And if that's the problem, that's a different kind of thing you're thinking about cash flow. So it gets you focused onto the right kind of thing. So, Chief, when you get there, as I said, have a task, use some of these techniques to work through it. Use silence and or music, whatever you want. And now here's the other thing that I do is I break it up. Particularly if I'm going for hours at a time. I might go for a walk, bushwalk in the mountains. I love the mountains. That's my place, right? Go for a bushwalk, or I put on music. I might go into a workout. I break it up so that I'm not thinking about this again and again. And what's interesting is the iterations. If I come back 2 or 3 or 4 times to this problem, the quality of my answer just gets better and better and better and better. And then eventually I just get this sense, that's it. I've done enough. I understand this now, and I can go and take some meaningful quality action. So, Chief, all great chiefs have quality, deep thinking time. All of them. They do not rush in. They spend time using the best parts of their mind. There is a great saying in the coaching world that I come from, and that is that we fundamentally believe that the resources to solve a problem exist within the client. As a coach, it's our job to draw those resources out, to let them solve their problem for themselves. This is your opportunity to do that on your own. Go and find ways to really think things through. When you've got a problem, sure, come back, speak to a peer, speak to a mentor, build it together, speak to your partner at home, then go away and do some more deep thinking time again. How often should you do it? Look, I try and do some basic deep thinking every single week, and then I have more structured, proper away thinking time every month. And that's usually about 4 hours I get away from home, get away from the office and reset and solve a big problem. And here's the thing, when I don't have it in my life, oh man, like I just feel like the world is starting to come in around me and there's too many big things are happening that I can't control. Chief, that's it for this week. Get out there. I hope those tips can help you with your deep thinking time. As always, remember to stay